NR Academy is a professional training center based on modern and innovative educational standards. The main goal of our academy is to reveal the potential of each student, support their academic and personal development, and show the right direction leading to success. We believe that success is not a coincidence, but the result of proper education, continuous development, and purposeful activity. NR Academy provides students with not only theoretical knowledge, but also practical skills that can be applied in real life. Our educational programs are prepared based on modern methodologies and innovative approaches and presented in an interactive and result-oriented manner. Each student is given an individual approach and a development strategy is formulated in accordance with their goals. Our academy organizes high-quality trainings on applicant preparation, psychology, personal development, public speaking and communication skills, body language, emotional intelligence, and professional development programs for trainers. These programs develop the knowledge and skills of participants, creating conditions for them to succeed in both their academic and professional lives. The main advantages of NR Academy are professional and experienced trainers, modern and innovative teaching methods, certified programs, online and face-to-face learning opportunities, as well as a practical and results-based approach. The education model offered at our academy is specially designed to support students' future career success. Our mission is to add value to society through knowledge and development, and our vision is to become one of the leading and influential education brands in the region.
NR Academy provides students with not only education, but also self-confidence, leadership, and a successful future. Don't leave your future to chance. Take the first step on the path to success today. Develop your knowledge with NR Academy, discover your potential, and achieve your goals with confidence. Nurey Rahimli is a trainer and education entrepreneur working in the field of modern education and personal development. He approaches education not only as a means of transferring theoretical knowledge, but also as a development process that shapes a person's mindset and prepares them for real life. The NR Academy he created is based on an innovative educational model, and the main goal here is to develop both academic and personal skills of students. In addition to preparing applicants, the Academy provides training in areas such as psychology, personal development, public speaking, communication skills, body language, and emotional intelligence. Nurey Rahimli's approach is based on individual development. He individually assesses the potential of each student, reveals their strengths, and purposefully shapes their development path. The main principle in his work philosophy is practical learning and result-oriented development. That is, the goal is not just to provide information, but to transform that knowledge into skills that can be used in real life. In general, Nurey Rahimli acts as an educational leader who aims to support young people in self-knowledge, self-confidence, and making better decisions in their future lives. NR Academy, your reliable partner on the path to success. Contact 077 345 50 20. When a person accepts that his brain is trying to protect him, but at the same time learns to overcome the limits of this protection, real development begins. And at this point, a person no longer thinks the same way as before. He realizes that fear, doubt, and hesitation will not completely disappear, but it is possible to act despite this. It is this approach that distinguishes a person from others and lays the foundation for real changes in his life. Why did this happen to me? Doesn't ask, what can I learn from this? Begins to ask the question. Although this change seems small, it has a very big impact. Because the first question makes a person passive, while the second question directs him to think actively and look for a way out. At the same time, a person understands that motivation is not a fixed thing. A person often waits for motivation to act, but in reality, motivation often arises after action. That is, a person first takes a step, and then motivation increases as he sees the result. For this reason, waiting for motivation is often a waste of time. The main thing is to build a system and turn action into a habit. At this point, the concept of discipline comes to the fore. Discipline is the ability to continue even if a person does not want to. A person is not always willing and energetic, but if he can continue despite this, this is precisely what makes his difference. Because success often depends not on talent, but on persistence. Small but continuous steps give big results in the long run. At the same time, a person begins to understand how he uses his attention. In modern times, attention is one of the most valuable resources. Where a person focuses his attention, his energy also goes there. If a person is constantly exposed to negative news, comparisons, and focuses on distractions, this affects the quality of his thinking. If he focuses his attention on development, learning, and useful activities, the results will change accordingly. Over time, a person learns to better manage his emotions. He understands that not every feeling is for immediate reaction. Sometimes it is enough to just observe. Emotions are a signal that comes and goes, but when a person does not control them, those emotions begin to control his behavior. This often leads to decisions that he will later regret. On the other hand, a person realizes that the concept of perfection is also an illusion. He understands that nothing is ideal on the first try. On the contrary, development is built on mistakes. Making mistakes is not a weakness, but part of the process. When a person accepts this, he is no longer afraid of mistakes and acts more freely. At this stage, a person no longer depends on external influences. He does not completely ignore the opinions of others, but he does not direct his life according to their opinions, because he understands that everyone evaluates the world according to his own experience, and this assessment is never completely objective. At the same time, a person also learns the concept of patience. He understands that real results take time. The search for quick results often leads to superficial success, but lasting and deep results require time and patience. This requires long-term thinking. As a result of all these processes, a person now approaches his life more consciously. He understands that his thoughts, habits, and decisions are interconnected and each affects the other. When he tries to change himself, he understands that it is important to change not only his behavior, but also his thinking system. And finally, a person comes to the conclusion that change never happens suddenly. It is a gradual process. By taking a small step every day, making a little better decision every day, and acting a little more consciously every day, a person can have a completely different life over time. This change may seem instantaneous from the outside, but in fact it is the result of a long-term internal process. When a person understands this, he stops waiting. He does not say, "I will start someday." He understands that the best time for change is now. And it is this decision, the decision to start, that is the most important point in the whole process. At this point, it becomes clear to the person that focus is everything. He accepts that the desire to do everything at once is unrealistic. Because the more attention is divided, the weaker the result. When a person chooses a direction and focuses on it continuously, the results become clearer and stronger. This requires patience and discipline. The person also understands that success is not measured only by the result. In fact, success is formed in the process. When a person gets a little better every day, when he develops himself a little more every day, he is already on the path to success. The result is a natural continuation of this process. This thinking frees a person from attachment to the result and helps him focus on the process. At this stage, the person already approaches mistakes differently. He sees a mistake not as a personal failure, but as information. Every mistake shows him what is not working, and this information helps him make a better decision for the next step. This approach makes a person more flexible and more resilient. At the same time, the person understands that it is impossible to control everything. There will always be uncertainty in life, but instead of running away from this uncertainty, you need to learn to live with it. A person can only control his thoughts, behavior, and reactions. Other factors will always be variable. This understanding makes a person calmer and more stable. He no longer panics in every situation, because he knows that the main thing is not the situation, but his reaction to it. This means the formation of emotional strength. At the end of all these processes, a person also changes his attitude towards himself. He no longer sees himself as someone who is constantly criticizing, but as someone who is developing himself. He becomes more realistic and more understanding towards himself. Because he understands that change takes time and everyone develops at his own pace. And the most important point emerges here. A person no longer waits. He no longer waits for the ideal conditions, the ideal time, the ideal motivation. He understands that these conditions will never be fully formed. The best time is always now. The moment a person makes this decision, a real turn in his life begins. Because he already leaves the stage of thinking and moves to the stage of action. He takes small steps, makes mistakes, learns, and continues. Over time, these steps combine and turn into big changes. And in the end, a person comes to the following conclusion. What changes his life is not a single big decision, but a collection of small but conscious decisions that he makes every day. And these decisions shape his identity. As a person changes who he is, his life also begins to change. He now understands that every choice, Every behavior is not just a momentary decision, but a step that determines his identity and the direction of his life in the future. As a person changes himself, his way of thinking changes, his feelings become more stable, and he can look at every situation more clearly. He understands that past mistakes are only a source of information. They do not hold him back, but on the contrary, prepare him to take smarter steps in the future. A person now does not see events in life only as coincidences. He understands that each event is completed by his ability to react and his choice. The same situation produces different results in different people, because the outcome depends not only on circumstances, but also on the way a person thinks and behaves. This awareness makes a person more responsible, because he knows that remaining inactive, indecisive, or passively reacting affects his future. He understands that although internal change begins only with thought, it is completed with behavior. A person gradually changes his habits, daily routines, and ways of thinking, thereby becoming a more purposeful and focused person. Small steps, continuous learning, and honesty with himself make him stronger. He no longer thinks only about what is possible, but also seeks answers to the question, how will I do it? A person also reevaluates the concept of time. He understands that every moment is an opportunity, and the value of each moment depends on his attention. Now he focuses his attention not on things that distract him, but on activities that energize and develop him. Social comparisons, empty doubts, and insignificant worries no longer distract him. He focuses only on his goals and values. At this stage, a person learns to control his emotions. He does not block his feelings, but accepts them as a source of information, not for reaction. Fear, anxiety, and hesitation cannot hold him back. On the contrary, he reads them correctly and turns them into action. The person understands that emotions are only a warning. The ability to direct them correctly is power. The person also realizes that he must understand boundaries. It is impossible to control everything in life, but what he can control, his thoughts, reactions, habits, and decisions, is enough to shape his life. He is no longer a slave to the influences of others, but he does not completely reject the opinions of others. From the moment he starts acting, internal processes accelerate, and all areas of his life are shaped by his will. Now he is not just a reactant, but an actor, author, and creative force of life. Every step, every thought, and every choice rewrites his identity. Inner strength, conscious attention, and continuous learning make him freer, more purposeful, and stronger. He understands that external conditions will never be completely ideal, but as he strengthens his inner world, he can achieve the best results in any situation. Every new day, every new decision, every new step makes him a different and stronger person than the previous one. A person no longer leaves his life to chance. He lives every moment consciously, shaping his future with every step. Inner silence, reflection, and conscious action are his greatest strength.